Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how to fill out our factor flowchart. And basically what a factor flowchart is it is basically your mental thought process when factoring polynomials. So when you get a polynomial that you are asked to factor, the first thing that you are always going to do is check to see if there is a greatest common factor. It's always going to be your first step, and that's why it's at the top of our flowchart. So if I was to look at all three terms in this polynomial, I can see I'm going to look at my smallest number, which is a 2, and ask myself, is it divisible into 6 and 8? Since it is, that means that 2 is my common factor of numbers among these terms. Okay, now I want to look at my variable factors. So I'm looking to see there's an x here, an x here, and x here, which means they all have some x's in common. Again, when we're thinking about exponent rules, x to the third really means x times x times x. X squared means x times x. And x to the third is x times x times x. And again, these are all factors because it's what we're multiplying to get x to the third and x squared. So if I'm looking to see what they have in common, each of these terms have x times x in common, which is essentially x squared. So that's going to be part of my GCF. I'm going to do the same thing with y's. I see y squared, y to the first, and y to the fourth. So they have 1y in common when it comes to factoring. Now again, I could do my work off to the side if I wanted to. When I'm factoring out a GCF, I'm really dividing that GCF out of each term, so I could show that. I can skip this step once I get a little better at it, but I can show this for now. So my 2's are going to cancel. If I have x cubed divided by x squared, I keep my base and subtract my exponent, so that leaves me with x to the first. Same thing with my y's, so that will leave me with y to the first for my first term. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X squared divided by x squared, they cancel out. Same thing with our y's. Okay, and then I'm going to bring down my sign. 8 divided by 2 is 4. X cubed divided by x squared is x. And y to the first divided by y, or y to the fourth divided by y to the first is y cubed. Okay, I would then look inside whatever is left after I've divided out my GCF to see if I can factor. I can't, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so that's my first step. After I've factored out the GCF, I'm going to ask myself, is it a binomial, trinomial, or 4-term polynomial? So in these spaces, I'm just going to fill out what that means. A binomial means we have 2 terms. Okay, a trinomial means we have 3 terms, and obviously a 4-term polynomial has 4 terms. Okay, so this is where the flowchart comes in place. This is a 1, 2, 3 term, so this is a trinomial. So I would go down to trinomial, and then I would ask myself, is it in, and this should say easy trinomial or a medium trinomial. So an easy trinomial, and I call it easy, this is obviously not a mathematical term. This just basically means that our a value is equal to 1. So trinomials are always going to be in standard form when we think, or we need it to be in standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So if my a value is 1, that means I have no number out here or a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, it's easy because I can skip right to my factored answer by looking at my c. So I'm asking myself, what are values of c that add to give me my b term? So values of, or factors of 8 that add to give me -6 are -4 and -2. And here's another example of easy. So it's always going to be x times x, which gives me x squared. In this case, I want factors of 8 that subtract to give me 2. So that would be a +4 and -2. And I can always go back and check my answers by foiling. Medium trinomial, and I call it medium because it's not really hard. It's just takes a little bit more steps than the easy. This basically means that our a value is greater than 1, so we have a number out front. Now, some of you might be really good at doing the guess and check method. So guess and check is where you go down to your answer, okay, and you figure it out. So basically, a number like this would be easy because in order to get 2x squared, I really only have the options of multiplying 2x and x. And in order to get 5, I have to multiply 1 and 5. Since these are both prime numbers, there's not really that many combinations that I could have. So skipping down to that would probably be reasonable. For some people that have a little harder time with that, we can use what we call expanding and grouping. Or another kind of name for that is the AC method. So with this method, you multiply a times c. So 2 times 5 is 10. We're now looking at factors of 10 that add to give me 7. So in this case, it's 2 and 5. You're going to then rewrite this trinomial as a 4-term polynomial. Now, it doesn't matter the order, but basically we're splitting up 7x and writing that as an addition problem. So 2x plus 5x is 7x. Okay, so this is the expanding part. Now we're grouping. So you're going to group these into 2 binomials and pull out the GCF. So on the left-hand side, I have a GCF of 2x, which would leave me with x plus 1. On the right-hand side, I have a GCF of positive 5, which again leaves me with x plus 1. The nice thing about this method is there's kind of a built-in check. These binomials should match. And so that's going to be one part of my answer, or half of my answer. And the other binomial comes from the greatest common factors we pulled out. So in this case, this would be 2x plus 5. Okay, so I jumped down to the trinomials because our greatest common factor happened to be a trinomial. But again, that's not always the case. Sometimes we can have a binomial, 2 terms. Now, for Algebra 1, the only types of binomials that we are going to learn to factor are what we call a difference of squares. Difference of squares, difference tells you it has to be subtraction. And squares, we're just talking about perfect squares. So with the difference of squares, okay, all you have to do is set up your answers as 2 binomials. And basically, you take the square root of each term. So this is 4x and 4x, and then 5 and 5, and your signs are always going to be opposite. So that means one has to be plus and one has to be minus. The reason for that is when you do FOIL, your outer and inner terms need to cancel out. Okay, so same thing over here. This is a difference of squares as well. The square root of m to the 8th is m to the 4th. So we have m to the 4th, m to the 4th. I need opposite signs. And then 6n. Okay, factoring by grouping is when we have a 4-term polynomial. And if you can do the expanding and grouping, this one's pretty easy because it's just the second part of that. So the grouping method is basically just when you group the 2 binomials, pull out the GCFs, and go from there. So it's kind of the second half of the expanding part. So in this case, on my left-hand side, I have an x squared in common, which would leave me with 2x plus 3. On the right-hand side, I have a 3 in common, which again leaves me with 2x plus 3. These should match up. So my final answer would be x squared plus 3, parentheses, 2x plus 3. Okay.